Thanks for being with us on Town Hall Media today. I'm talking to Kaitlin Owens. She's with the American Conservative Union, and with Xavier. And what organization are you with?
I'm with the Campaign for the Fair Sentencing of Youth.
All right. Now, I found you because I was on Twitter and I was checking out CPAC's feed. They said you have to come down to the ACU booth because there's a virtual reality experience about criminal justice and juveniles in the criminal justice system you have to see. I ran straight down there because this is something I care about a lot. I care about people who are either wrongly incarcerated or have been there for too long and need to have some reprieve. I believe in second chances, and I don't think people are disposable.
That's right.
And I think we need to reach out to the conservative community because they're always about 100% law enforcement, law enforcement, law enforcement, no mercy. And that's something that I feel like we need to change on a bit. So who would like to start to tell me about, maybe let's start with the VR experience, and then we'll get into your story too.
Well, the VR experience really leads into his, so hopefully that'll be a nice transition. But the American Conservative Union really prides ourselves in working with criminal justice reform, mainly because when you think of criminal justice reform, a lot of Democrats wonder why conservatives are for this issue, and really it's not a tough on crime issue, it's a smart on crime issue. We're not being soft. We still want to hold people accountable for what they've done, but we believe in second chances, as you mentioned to us earlier. And so we partner with a lot of different organizations, and this is something that we can work across the aisle on. And so with that being said, I was in New York for a trip, and I happened upon the Youth Fair Sentencing campaign and experienced this virtual reality. And one of those stories in this VR was Xavier's, and I had met Xavier previously. We worked alongside each other, but it's just a really powerful experience. And
it is. I came out crying, and I felt it puts you in the prison cell, and I felt very claustrophobic. It's amazing how the technology can really show you a real scenario, but I felt it was very disturbing and dark. And a lot of the times, now you're talking specifically about juveniles who are incarcerated, correct?
Yes. So one thing that we really wanted to do this CPAC, and after watching it and experiencing it and hearing his story, I really thought, one, CPAC is coming up, we have to show them this, but two, we're not talking at people, we're showing them stories of human lives, real human lives, and what is happening in our criminal justice system. And so what better way for our CPACers to really understand who we are and what we are.
What's the response been? And has the booth been very busy? And what's the response you're getting?
It's been very positive, and I'll actually look to Xavier on that. He's been to the booth more than I have.
It's funny you asked that because I got a variety of responses, but the dominant theme that I've experienced, and as soon as they come out of the headset, the first thing they say is, "I'm really happy you all are sharing about this."
Yeah.
And I think it's really just about raising awareness. I mean, it's very interesting. We are a country that we really aspire towards the best for our kids, but there's one segment of our society, unfortunately, particularly kids who are getting justice involved, who are getting involved with the justice system, that we tend to ignore, neglect, and abandon. And sadly, many kids today many who were once children, who are now adults, have been in prison since they were children. And those are particularly individuals who have been given life sentences when they were kids. And so people don't know that this country is the only country in the world that actually gives kids a term of years that has no end, meaning you would die in prison. And for me, as someone who made a horrible mistake as a child at a very young age of 13 years old, who pled guilty, who was instantly remorseful and sad for what I did, but also had a second chance. I was able to get out after a number of years. I feel bad for those who don't have that chance. And that's why this VR experience is so important.
Yeah, I was very struck by, in the VR experience, it starts you out by asking, remember when you were 13?
Yeah.
Gosh, I mean, you're not even close to being a fully developed human being at 13. And the choices that you make at the age of 13 are just not the same kinds of choices that you would make at 30, at 13. So tell us what it was like for you. You were convicted at 13. You spent how many years?
I spent 13 years in prison. So I came out after having spent half my life in prison for something I did at a very young age.
That is such a long time for a 13-year-old.
A lifetime for
a
a
lifetime.
So, yeah, and it's interesting because I look back upon that experience, and the sad reality is that at the very young age of 13, I had 19 arrests and 7 convictions. I was a child welfare runaway. I was a kid who the courts had deemed as incorrigible. Soon after, they were referring to us as super predators. They said that we would never change, that we were beyond redemption and unworthy of a second chance. But the fact of the matter is that I grew up, I became increasingly more remorseful. I changed, I had a change. I matured, my brain evolved.
Right.
We talked about the prefrontal cortex.
The brain doesn't even develop until you're 25.
That's right.
So it's how do we expect a 13-year-old to have the same, and you were tried as an adult, is that correct?
Yes. In my state, under the law that existed at the time, I was under the discretionary decision of being tried as an adult. Meaning, even though I was a very small child, very visibly a small child, they looked at me and said, guess what, you're no longer a child, you're an adult. And from that day forward, I was exposed to extreme sentencing schemes that were designed for adults. And that was just truly unfair for a child to have to go through that.
It's incredible. How did you become hooked up with this now that you're doing? What is your main, how did you do it? Because when you get out of prison, I have been told that it's very, and I can see it, it's very hard to get a job. You now have a felony conviction. You have to check that box every time. How do you get from there to where you are now?
I credit just a lot of extraordinary opportunities and good people who saw me for who I was and didn't judge me based upon the worst thing I had ever done. I'm also blessed to be a part of a great national network of formerly incarcerated individuals who are great support to me and in my life. And that network is called ICANN, the Incarcerated Children's Advocacy Network. And we're constantly building each other up. We're there supporting one another. We're helping each other through the process of healing because you don't heal in an instant.
Sure.
Incarceration as a child is something that has a lifelong impression upon you.
But I would imagine that PTSD is part of that trauma
It's a big piece of it. It's a very big piece of it. And so trauma, obviously the dominant theme, even before incarceration, is only exacerbated when kids are thrown into the adult system. Because now they're very visibly vulnerable as children. They're being thrown in solitary confinement. They're being faced with consequences that, they really just totally ignore the need for a healthy social emotional development. And so the feelings of isolation, loneliness, unhappiness, these things really
contact,
really hurt
no
you as a
physical
child.
contact.
No
That was
physical
the other
contact,
thing in the experience that really hurt me as a mother. And I have 3 children and I have a 14-year-old. To imagine that she would be thrown somewhere where she was no longer allowed to have any physical contact with her own family, having to meet with them behind glass, that is devastating. That human beings need contact. How can we keep children away from the people who love them? And I'm assuming in your experience as a runaway from the foster care system, is that what you?
That's right.
Have you been able to make connections with your biological family again since then?
Well, my mother was always present in my life, but the great challenge, and what's really the dominant theme for a lot of former and current life sentence children, is that sometimes there's this great instability and challenges within the home.
Right.
And that's also exacerbated by trauma, other things. For example, my mother was schizophrenic. She dealt with mental health problems. My stepfather was an abusive alcoholic. I was in and out of circumstances that just exposed us to increasingly more dangerous and life-threatening circumstances as kids. And sadly, that trauma manifested in the most devastating way, in which I was responsible for the loss of another kid's life in my community. Something I instantly regretted, but sadly, I can see what led to that. And unfortunately, a lot of kids are going through that today.
Right. So what can we do? And here's a question for you, Kaitlin. Does the American Conservative Union have a direct line to the White House on this issue? Because it feels like Donald Trump cares about this issue. He clearly cares about criminal justice and improper sentencing. We've seen the legislation come down for criminal justice reform. What else? Have you been able to talk to the White House about the children that are incarcerated like this?
Yeah, so we worked very closely. We were probably there, once every 2 weeks or so, and had weekly calls with the White House about this, specifically with Jared Kushner and his team on the First Step Act. And we have since, talked about the second step, and the third and the fourth, because this was just the first step.
Because there's a lot more.
Yes, there's a lot more to be done.
That's right.
But we do commend, President Trump for signing the First Step Act and being a leader on it.
Wonderful.
It was, the first criminal justice reform legislation in, a decade. And so that was really impactful. But since then, we have talked about a number of different issues, specifically with reentry, that juveniles have as well as anyone else. Whether you get out while you're still a teenager or you get out, 13 years later, they still face the same things.
I just wrote an article about the Hope for Prisoners organization that is helping prisoners who are coming out of the system to get jobs. And President Trump just spoke at their graduation. So it seems like he's very in touch with these challenges that are going on with people who are incarcerated.
Yeah, I mean, he really looks to his team for guidance, and honestly, grassroots organizations is who knows the issue. I just got out of a meeting with conservatives talking about criminal justice reform, talking about what the next step is, and so this is right up his alley. And if we just really encourage him and really bring this issue to light as you are right now. We can get a lot done. It's really just about educating, either the president or, conservatives or, even progressives on this issue.
Sure. It does seem like it's one of these issues that we really can work with Democrats on, because they say they want criminal justice reform, although it's interesting to me that none of their presidents have done so. So in fact, you mentioned super predator, and that was the Clinton years, and with Hillary Clinton calling these people who commit crimes super predators. And then we have Barack Obama, who didn't do anything for criminal justice.
Had a chance to.
And had the chance to, and he did not. So I'm really hopeful that they will put their money where their mouth is on this issue and actually work to get more criminal justice in this country, because I do think it's a major problem.
The interesting thing about it is that, again, I work for the Campaign for the Fair Sentencing of Youth, and we're a nonpartisan organization. We have people from all sides of the aisle, many people of various faiths, and who really just care about kids. And that's what I stand for. Regardless of whether you're red or blue, whatever you care about, if you believe in children and you want to ensure that they have opportunity to grow, thrive, and be safe in our society and be protected from harm from all systems and all adults, then I think that we're on the same page. And I think that's what's beautiful about me being able to be in this space. And we can talk about the importance of the most vulnerable in our society, and that's kids.
Absolutely. Yeah. What's the website where people can find you if they want to? What can they do? Can they volunteer? Can they donate? What's the option for people?
To learn more about the campaign, it's called the Campaign for the Fair Sentencing of Youth, and it's www.fairsentencingofyouth.org. And it's really just about ensuring that kids in our country are never thrown away forever. And that's really the most important thing to us.
No one is disposable.
That's right.
Thank you so much, Xavier, for that.
Thank you so much.
And thank you, Kaitlin. I really appreciate you coming by.
And if people want to know more about us, our website is conservative.org, and there will be a link to our criminal justice page.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for coming by.
Thank you. I want a hug.
I do too. I want to give you a hug too.